You ever notice how injustice doesn't always arrive with sirens blaring or fists flying? Sometimes it just creeps up in a quiet airport terminal, routine, polite, wrapped in a smile that doesn't quite meet your eyes. I'll never forget that morning at Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, where the silence cracked wide open over a seat. Yeah, just a seat, but not really. When mine was taken, and a chain of old ghosts came rushing out, demanding their due. I was nearly 80, still tried to keep a soldier's bearing, straightening my collar with hands that had seen too much for one lifetime. I always travel with a suit and a briefcase. Call it habit, call it respect. My cane, polished wood with brass, looked like any old man's walking stick, but inside, well, inside was the reason I was headed to D.C. that day. They'd called what happened in Panama a classified operation, but what I carried in that cane was proof that a lot of men in Washington had slept easier than they deserved. My daughter Monica, sharp as a tack, worried herself sick over me. She works federal, knows how these things can turn. She offered to get me protection, secure transport, the whole 9 yards. I told her that's exactly what they'd expect. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is walk right through the front door like you've got nothing to hide. Besides, I wanted to see for myself if things had really changed in this country, or if the old games just were new faces. Let me back up a sec. The airport was humming, people shuffling through security, their minds already at their destinations. Me? I get randomly selected for extra screening, as usual. I didn't fight it, but when you've got a medal on your chest and a military ID, and still the TSA waves every white-haired white couple through while you're getting patted down. Well, you get the picture. It's just a check, sir, they said, pretending my cane was a security threat, not a crutch earned over 3 decades of service. I let them look. I always do. But in my head, I kept a ledger that I made it to the gate, feeling that familiar burn in my chest. Not anger, not really, just the weight of all those little slights that pile up year after year. Pre-boarding for veterans was announced, but somehow I watched a line of able-bodied business travelers, suits and loafers, not a limp among them, slide ahead while the agent at the desk flashed her best, "Just wait a minute" smile. When I finally spoke up, she shrugged me off, said the system was down. Yeah, right. But the real storm didn't hit until I boarded. My seat, first class 2B, already occupied by a young white man in khakis, Richard Slade, though I didn't know his name yet. He didn't even look at me, just tapped away on his laptop. "Excuse me, that's my seat." He glanced up, gave me that practiced smirk people reserve for the old or the troublesome. "Maybe you're confused, Pops. Happens at your age." That was the first shot across the bow. The flight attendant, Patricia, wasn't much better. She barely checked my boarding pass before handing it back and siding with Slade. "You probably misread it, old man. Happens to the best of us." Now, I'd learned to pick my battles. Sometimes you take the hit and walk away. But that day, something snapped. Not just because of the seat, but because of what I carried. Because I was done letting the world pretend old men with canes are invisible, that our stories don't matter. Still, I let them move me to the back, by the bathroom. Humiliating, sure, but I'd survived worse. As I settled into that cramped seat, I called Monica, gave her the code we'd worked out years ago. They took the seat. That meant more than lost comfort. It meant surveillance, a trap, eyes everywhere. She went to work, hacking flight manifests, checking for names that didn't belong. And what she found chilled me to my core. 3 new passengers with ghost identities. One supposedly a federal air marshal, but with credentials that didn't check out. Twist here. The young black girl who'd filmed my run-in at the gate? She was still watching, phone at the ready. Every injustice, every snub, getting beamed out to the world. And then there was Emma, the flight attendant who'd clocked the manifest changes, recognized a fellow vet in trouble. We spoke in code, the way soldiers do. Army coffee, strong enough to float a horseshoe? She answered back with the Marine joke, told me she'd done tours in Afghanistan. I told her about Panama. Sometimes you meet a stranger who knows the exact weight of what you're carrying. The plane took off. Through the curtain, I could see Agent Keene, a man too crisp, too careful, his posture screaming military under that civilian act. Emma and I mapped out the threats, watched their movements. Over the phone, Monica tracked a diversion in our flight path. We weren't headed to DC anymore. Someone had rerouted us toward a private strip. No crowds, no witnesses. That's when it got real. Slade and Keen exchanged coded whispers about how this would all go down. Heart attack, maybe. Old man flying alone. Seen it a dozen times in Panama. Emma promised she'd stay close. Not on my watch, she said. And I believed her. Meal service started. Emma staged a spill, drawing attention as I unlocked the hidden compartment in my cane, extracting the drive that held the evidence. She shielded me while I connected it to my flip phone, starting the painfully slow upload to Monica. Every move was a risk. The cabin was a powder keg, then the hammer dropped. Keen approached, trying to escort me up front, charging me with cyber terrorism, the old cover. He whispered, "We can handle this quietly. Or like Panama." I laughed, dry as old bones. "You classify your crimes, not me." When he lunged, I was ready. Decades of muscle memory taking over. Stun pinned to the wrist. Chaos in the aisle. Emma swinging her service card into the second agent. Phones everywhere, passengers filming. You know what I mean when I say a truth too big to kill? Monica patched my phone into the plane screens. Suddenly, every seat back was playing my testimony. Satellite photos, classified orders, photos of graves and children, and orders signed by men who'd thought their secrets safe. Passengers gasped. Some wept. Emma held the line. Monica hacked the feed, and the world started watching. There was no putting this genie back in the bottle. Slade, panicked and desperate, pulled a gun. Passengers ducked. Emma shielded a boy. The gun wavered. "Your father's name is in those files, isn't it?" I said, locking eyes with him. And he broke, admitted his father, Colonel Slade, had given the orders in Panama. My men, my friends. 30 years of silence collapsing into a single bloody moment. We landed at Andrews. Red and blue lights flashing, veterans and cameras waiting on the tarmac. Emma patched my side up. "Just a graze, I've had worse." Monica made it on board, hugging me so tight I almost dropped the cane. Outside, the world waited, hungry for the story no one wanted told. They tried to bury me. I said, loud enough for every camera. But I brought the shovel. In the aftermath, the story went global. Emma and Monica fronted the news. Veterans held sit-ins. Congress passed the Hawkins Act, and the airline overhauled its policies. Slade and the agents were led away in cuffs. But for me, the victory wasn't in the headlines. It was sitting with the families of the men lost in Panama, giving them back their stories, their names, the dignity stolen along with their lives. At the Senate hearings, I testified, laid out the evidence, named names, faced generals who'd once signed off on lies. The room fell silent as the weight of decades crashed down on men who'd never expected to be called out. In the end, veterans across the country saluted. Not me, but the truth. Weeks later, I stood again at Hartsfield-Jackson, this time wearing my dress blues. Security agents waved me through. At the gate, a young soldier snapped a salute. A little boy asked if I was a hero. I told him no, just a man who wouldn't stay seated. You want to talk justice, right and wrong, community and conflict? Drop your thoughts below. What does it take to finally break the silence? What does it cost? Share your story, because truth isn't just one man's burden. Sometimes, you have to make the world listen.